There rests a scholar from the year 1058 who wrote about economic collapse with such terrifying accuracy that modern economists still can't believe he existed. His name was Ghazali. And what he predicted about money, greed, and the fall of civilizations is playing out right now, frame by frame, in front of our eyes. But here's what nobody tells you. This wasn't some mystical prophet. This was a man who watched his own society destroy itself from the inside, and he documented exactly how it happened. Step by step, warning by warning. And then we ignored every single lesson. Let me take you back. It's 1058 in Persia. A boy is born who will eventually become one of the most influential thinkers in human history. Not just in the Islamic world, in the entire world. His full name is Abu Hamid Muhammad ibn Muhammad al-Ghazali, but everyone just calls him al-Ghazali. Now picture this. While Europe is still crawling out of what they call the Dark Ages, the Islamic world is experiencing something unprecedented. An economic golden age. We're talking about an empire that stretches from Spain all the way to the borders of India. Cities like Baghdad have over 1 million people. Damascus is a financial hub. Cairo is exploding with wealth. Trade routes are pumping money into these cities at a rate nobody has ever seen before. Silk from China, spices from India, gold from Africa, silver from Central Asia. The merchants are getting rich. The markets are booming. Money is flowing like water. And right in the middle of all this prosperity, young Al-Ghazali is watching, learning, studying. By the time he hits his 30s, he's already one of the most respected scholars in the empire. He's teaching at the Nizamiya school in Baghdad, which is basically the Harvard of the medieval world. He's got prestige. He's got influence. He's got students coming from across the known world to learn from him, but something starts bothering him. Everyone around him is celebrating the wealth, but he's noticing patterns. Patterns that terrify him, because he realizes that his civilization isn't getting stronger with all this money. It's getting weaker. So he starts asking questions nobody wants to hear. What happens when people care more about accumulating wealth than about why they're accumulating it? What happens when money becomes the only measure of success? What happens when the rich get richer while the poor get poorer and nobody thinks that's a problem? And to answer these questions, he does something revolutionary. He starts analyzing money not as a religious scholar, but as a behavioral scientist before that term even existed. He wants to understand what money does to people, how it changes their decisions, how it corrupts their values, how it eventually destroys societies. His first major insight hits like a bomb. He says money is just a mirror. Think about that. A mirror has no value by itself. You can't eat a mirror. You can't wear a mirror. You can't build a house with a mirror. Its only purpose is to reflect something else. Money works exactly the same way. The coins aren't valuable because they're made of gold or silver. They're valuable because of what people agree they represent. This sounds simple now, but in the 1000s, this was a radical idea. Most people still thought wealth meant physical stuff, land, gold, treasure. Al-Ghazali is saying no, wealth is an agreement, a collective belief. And the second that belief breaks, your gold is just metal. Fast forward to today. What backs the US dollar? Not gold, not silver. Just the collective belief that it has value. Al-Ghazali understood this 1,000 years before we figured it out. But then he goes deeper. He starts identifying the specific behaviors that destroy economies. And the first one he targets is hoarding. When wealthy people accumulate money and then just sit on it, he says you're watching the economy die in real time. He uses this phrase that still gives me chills. He says it's like freezing the bloodstream of society. Think about what blood does in your body. It circulates. It brings oxygen to your organs. It removes waste. It keeps everything alive. But if the blood stops moving, if it pools in one place, the body shuts down. Money works the same way. When it circulates, it creates jobs. It funds businesses. It builds infrastructure. But when the wealthy hoard it, when they lock it away in vaults or offshore accounts, the economy suffocates. And here's the part that makes this relevant today. Right now, as I'm talking to you, the richest people on earth are sitting on trillions of dollars in wealth that's not circulating, not being invested in productive businesses, not creating jobs. Just sitting there, growing through financial manipulation while regular people struggle. Al-Ghazali called this exact problem 900 years ago, but he doesn't stop there. His second warning is about speculation. He absolutely destroys merchants who manipulate markets, create artificial shortages, or profit from other people's suffering. He says this isn't smart business. This is corruption. And corruption spreads like a disease through every level of society. He writes, and this is a real quote, that whoever profits from the suffering of others is profiting from corruption itself. Now think about what happened in 2008. Banks were betting against their own customers. They were selling mortgages they knew would fail and then making money when those mortgages collapsed. People lost their homes. Families were destroyed, and the banks made billions. That's exactly what Ghazali was warning about. Or look at what happens during natural disasters. Prices for water, food, and fuel suddenly spike not because there's less supply, but because someone sees an opportunity to exploit desperate people. Ghazali saw this in his time and he called it what it is: theft disguised as business. Now here's what people always get wrong about him. They assume he was anti-wealth or anti-market. Completely false. Ghazali loved markets. He believed trade was natural and necessary. He believed people should be able to earn wealth. What he couldn't stand was dishonest wealth. Wealth built on lies, manipulation, cheating, exploitation. He argues that markets only function when there's trust. When a buyer trusts that the seller isn't cheating them. When a seller trusts they'll get paid. When everyone trusts that the weights and measures are accurate. When people trust that contracts will be honored. The moment that trust breaks, the market breaks. And every financial crisis in history proves him right. The Great Depression didn't start because of bad numbers. It started because people stopped trusting banks. The 2008 crisis didn't start because of complicated math. It started because people realized the banks had been lying about the value of mortgage-backed securities. Trust collapsed first. The economy collapsed second. But Ghazali also identified something that governments do that destroys economies: currency manipulation. In his time, rulers would dilute the gold or silver content in coins to stretch their budgets. They'd take a coin that was supposed to be 90% gold and make it 80% gold, pocket the difference and pretend nothing changed. Ghazali saw right through this. He said when governments tamper with currency, they're not being clever. They're committing theft. They're stealing from every person who holds that currency. And worse, they're destroying trust in the monetary system itself. He predicted that if rulers manipulated currency too often, people would lose faith and start using foreign currencies instead. And this exact pattern has played out repeatedly throughout history. In Weimar Germany in the 1920s, the government printed so much money that people literally used it as wallpaper because it was worthless. In Zimbabwe in the 2000s, they printed $100 trillion bills that couldn't buy a loaf of bread. In Venezuela right now, people have abandoned the bolivar and are using US dollars or cryptocurrency because they don't trust their own government as money. Ghazali predicted all of this before paper money even existed. But here's where his analysis gets really dark. He argues that you can't unfix a broken economy with better policies or smarter regulations if the people running the system are corrupt. Because corruption flows from the top down. When rulers are dishonest, officials become dishonest. When officials are dishonest, merchants become dishonest. When merchants are dishonest, customers become dishonest. It's a chain reaction. And once it starts, it's almost impossible to stop because everyone justifies their own corruption by pointing at someone else's. He says something that should be carved into every government building. A society can survive poverty, it can survive war, it can survive natural disasters, but it cannot survive corruption. Because corruption destroys the one thing that holds civilization together: trust. And once trust is gone, the economy doesn't just decline, it collapses. Now let me show you why this matters right now. Ghazali was writing during the Islamic Golden Age, a period of incredible prosperity and advancement. But he was watching the cracks form. The wealth inequality, the market manipulation, the government corruption, the breakdown of trust, and he documented what happened next. The Golden Age ended, not overnight, not because of a single event, but because the moral foundation that supported all that prosperity slowly eroded. The same cities that had been centers of learning and wealth declined. The empire fragmented. The prosperity dried up. And the pattern Ghazali described? We're watching it happen again. Right now, in real time. Global wealth inequality is higher than it's been in over a century. The richest 1% own more wealth than the bottom 90% combined. That's hoarding on a scale Ghazali would recognize immediately. Financial speculation has become the dominant way wealth is created. More money is made moving money around than actually producing goods or services. That's the exact corruption Al-Ghazali warned about. Governments around the world are printing money at unprecedented rates. The US Federal Reserve's balance sheet has exploded. Central banks everywhere are manipulating currencies. That's the currency debasement Al-Ghazali said would destroy trust, and trust in institutions is collapsing. Trust in government is at historic lows. Trust in media is plummeting. Trust in corporations is disappearing. People don't believe what they're told anymore because they've been lied to too many times. Every single warning sign Al-Ghazali identified is flashing red right now. Here's what keeps me up at night. Al-Ghazali wasn't just describing problems. He was describing a sequence. First comes the wealth concentration. Then comes the speculation and corruption. Then comes the currency manipulation. Then comes the breakdown of trust. And then comes the collapse. We're not at the beginning of this sequence. We're near the end. The 2008 financial crisis was a warning. We bailed out the banks, changed nothing fundamental, and went right back to the same behaviors. The inflation we're seeing now is another warning. Printing trillions of dollars has consequences. But instead of addressing the root causes, we're just hoping it goes away. Al-Ghazali would recognize this pattern instantly. A civilization in denial, ignoring every warning sign, insisting that this time is different, that we're smarter, that the rules don't apply to us. But here's the thing about economic gravity. It doesn't care what you believe. It doesn't care how advanced your technology is. It doesn't care how sophisticated your models are. When the foundation cracks, the building falls. Every time. Without exception. So what's the solution? This is the uncomfortable part. Al-Ghazali could diagnose the disease perfectly. He could predict the outcome with terrifying accuracy. But stopping it? That required something he knew was almost impossible. It required people to voluntarily choose long-term collective benefit over short-term personal gain. It required the wealthy to stop hoarding and start circulating. It required the powerful to stop exploiting and start serving. It required institutions to prioritize trust over profit. In other words, it required a moral transformation. And those don't happen often in history. So we're left with a choice. We can keep pretending that infinite growth makes sense, that wealth inequality doesn't matter, that speculation is the same as productivity, that printing money has no consequences, that trust in institutions doesn't matter, or we can look honestly at what Al-Ghazali saw. A civilization drunk on its own success, ignoring every warning, racing toward a cliff while insisting the ground is solid. The signs are all there: the hoarding, the speculation, the manipulation, the corruption, the breakdown of trust. We have a 900-year-old roadmap showing us exactly where this leads. The question isn't whether the system will break. The question is when, and what will be left when it does. Because Al-Ghazali watched his civilization make these exact mistakes. He documented the warning signs. He explained the mechanisms. He predicted the outcome. And he was right. Now we get to decide if we're going to learn from his warning or repeat his civilization's mistakes. So far, we're not doing great.